Hey everybody, what is going on? Hex here with another Master Duel video for you guys. Today we're going to finally start getting into these deck profiles with the cards from the new packs. And the first one that I'm going to jump right into is Adventure Phantom Knight, which is a deck that I've been quite looking forward to, as it can do some fairly disgusting things. And by disgusting things, I'm talking about not only the DPE Scythe Lock that we were already doing before in the previous iteration, but throwing on a casual omni-negate on top of that. Of course, I am referring to Wandering Gryphon Rider, which is basically the cornerstone of the Adventure engine, which we discussed a couple of days ago. If you are not familiar with the Adventure engine, what all the cards are and what exactly they all do and how they work together, then feel free to check out that video, and that will give you a rundown of how the engine works and what makes it so good. But the TLDR of it is that you get a free special summon. Like, it doesn't take up your normal summon, and for most decks it's one card, right? You open the Water Enchantress or the Foolish Burial in addition to your combo, and then you get to do you get to get the omni-negate, and also the bounce on your turn is not bad either. But the cool thing about Phantom Knights is that thanks to Cherubni, we can actually incorporate the Adventure engine directly into our own combos without having to open a card for it. So we can just use Cherubni to send Water Enchantress from our deck to the graveyard, because Cherubni doesn't have to send a Fiend. Remember, it's any level 3 monster. You send it from deck to graveyard, and that will allow us to send the Water Enchantress, go for the Rite of Aramesir, and then set up the token with the and then use the Fateful Adventure to set up the Dracoback as well as the Wandering Gryphon Rider. And then on top of that, we then continue to go into our play that's going to end us on DPE plus Scythe. Now, this particular iteration of Adventure Phantom Knight is fairly streamlined towards that one combo. We're only playing 40 cards here, but this is really one of those decks where you could be playing any number of cards. You could be playing 40 like I am, you could be playing 45, 50, 55, 60. For this particular deck, those are actually all valid options in my opinion. I don't know for sure how many cards I'm going to land on. I'm already thinking about adding cards and going up to I'm probably going to start by just going up to like 42 or 43 and seeing how I like that, because so basically I wanted to start not only for you all but for myself with just a kind of bare bones or again streamlined list towards that one card combo, not one card combo, but that's that one combo to get the DPE plus Scythe plus Adventure engine out, just so that I could show off and also get a feel for the base of what the deck is trying to do, right? Like, this is probably the most basic iteration of this deck. There's, again, so many different ways to build it. You can see we're not playing a lot of those combo starters or extenders that we had in previous Phantom Knight decks. We don't have tour guides, we don't have the E-Tellies and the Psychic, Wielder and Tracker, which are kind of some of the first things I'm thinking about adding back, are actually the E-Tellies and then the level 3 Psychic monsters, because getting to Cherubni is one of the most important parts of this combo line. Although having access to both Torn Scales and Silent Boots is very important as well. For the base of the combos that we're going to cover with this build, you're going to want to ideally open Torn Scales plus Silent Boots, or a way to get to these two cards. If you open Torn Scales plus Silent Boots, that is an instant combo towards, again, DPE plus Scythe plus your Adventure setup. That's all you need are those two cards. Of course, there are other plays that you can make outside of that, but without other extenders and combo starters with this particular build, it's a little bit difficult to make those plays sometimes, and that's why I say that I am definitely thinking about adding more cards to this build. So again, these 40 cards are just kind of what I consider the base. Like, this is, again, the most streamlined version of getting that one combo out, and I'll show you how to do that combo in some gameplay videos coming up here. Before we get into that, I just want to talk about a little bit about the card choices in the deck and why I'm choosing to include some of the cards that I am, and so on and so forth. So, obviously we're playing Season Ash, Nibiru, pretty standard hand trap stuff. The Phantom Knights, we're only playing one Ancient Cloak. We were playing two before, but we really only need one copy for the combos we're doing here. And then Ragged Gloves, we're playing just a single copy of that like we were before. 3 Silent Boots and the 2 Torn Scales, obviously Maxx copies that we're able to run of each. for that. It actually kind of makes a little bit more sense now to me why they limited torn scale or semi-limited torn scales earlier. This seemed like a bit of a random hit at the time, but now we're definitely seeing, or at least I personally am. I'm sure people who are already familiar with this deck, this hit made total sense. But for me, I'm like, oh, so that's why torn scales got semi. That makes sense. Okay. Of course, the Scythe, and then the Dogda to get the Scythe. And of course, like the DPE stuff. So actually, one of the main deck choices I wanted to go over was the 3 Forbidden Droplets. I touched upon this in my video where we went over the adventure engine as a whole, but I feel that Forbidden Droplet moving forward is going to be a particularly good tech choice. I don't know that I need 3 copies. Like, I could definitely see cutting down a copy. I'm probably going to, actually, and then, you know, then on top of that adding some other cards, but I still have to kind of suss that out and maybe do a little bit more testing before I do that as well. But I am liking the Forbidden Droplets already, because, you know, Droplet is really good in formats where omni-negates are common. That's why during, you know, the initial Master Duel format, Season 1, 2, 3, 4, and then the beginning of 5, especially the beginning of 5, we saw Drytrons everywhere. And we, as a result, we're playing Forbidden Droplet and seeing a lot of Forbidden Droplets, because the ability to not only negate the card that's threatening to negate your stuff, but also by sending a monster, make them unable to respond, is going to be the best way to respond and then make plays during your turn in this format. So, and of course, with the advent of adventures and Wandering Gryphon Rider being a very common threat that you're going to see on board, and honestly, I don't know about the majority of your games, but I would say a significant portion, like at least probably like 40% of your games, you're going to see Wandering Gryphon Riders. So having the Forbidden Droplet in order to be able to stop that, in addition to whatever your opponent's actual main, you know, combo ends on, is going to be very important moving forward. Again, 3 copies, I don't know, it's very strong. Like, I don't think 3 copies is wrong, but I think with this particular build, again, I just find myself wanting at least a couple more ways to combo. So taking out a Droplet and then adding some more cards, I think, is going to be how I address that. Could also be playing 3 crossouts if you wanted to. This card being very, very good moving forward, as, you know, any adventure deck can use crossout to negate other adventures from starting off their plays. Or there have even been times we might even see an example in the gameplay coming up where, you know, your opponent goes to destroy the crossout designator with like some back row hate. You can just flip it up and then just banish like a Water Enchantress or something, or like a Rite of Aramesir, the extra one that you didn't use during your first turn, and that'll be a pretty safe bet. Again, we're also playing DPE, so if you have already seen that your opponent is a deck that will be playing DPE, you can send a Fusion Destiny. Because we're playing 2 very common engines, 3 Crossout Designator could definitely be a thing here. Again, I'm just kind of opting for 2 because I wanted to stick to 40 cards for my initial build here, but it could definitely be a card that you add more copies of. As far as the extra deck goes, the extra deck does look quite a bit different from before. We're not seeing Ronga Bongo here anymore. We're not seeing Requiem. We're not seeing F-Zero. None of those stuff, none of those stuff, none of that stuff, rather, is present anymore, as, again, we are streamlined, focused towards getting out DPE plus Scythe plus Gryphon Rider. Although there is certainly room to add a lot of those cards back into this extra deck, because a lot of the stuff you don't need but is nice. Like Boral Sword is chief among them. If you don't have a Boral Sword, don't feel like you have to craft it for this deck. I definitely just kind of threw this in because I didn't really have anything else in mind that I wanted for the extra deck. And honestly, even I mean, Leak Spider and Almirage are actually fairly good in specific scenarios that I believe we will actually see come up in the gameplay here, but these are relatively optional. Same with like the Nightmare Unicorn and like the Downerd maybe, but the Downerd is good if you want a 4 material Zeus, which again, we will see examples of that in gameplay coming up as well. So I've talked quite a bit about that gameplay. I'm just going to go ahead and get right into it, but before we do, just briefly, I want to run through the list here, card by card, just to ensure that, you know, everybody knows what all the cards are that are in the deck here. So we are playing 3 Maxx, 1 the Phantom Knights of Ancient Cloak, 3 the Phantom Knights of Silent Boots, 1 the Phantom Knights of Ragged Gloves, 3 Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring, 2 the Phantom Knights of Torn Scale, 2 Water Enchantress of the Temple, 1 Destiny Hero Celestial, 1 Artifact Scythe, 1 Destiny Hero Dasher, 1 Wandering Gryphon Rider, 1 Nibiru, the Primal Being, 1 Foolish Burial, 1 Reinforcement of the Army, 1 Fusion Destiny, 1 Rite of Aramesir, 1 Dracoback, the Rideable Dragon, 1 Fateful Adventure, 2 Call by the Grave, 2 Cross-Side Designator, 3 Forbidden Droplet, 1 Phantom Knight's Wing, 1 Phantom Knights of Shade Brigandine, 1 Infinite Impermanence, 1 The Phantom Knight's Fogblade, 1 Destiny Hero Destroyer, excuse me. I'm actually gonna take a sip of water real quick, 1 sec. There we go. 1 Levier the Sea Dragon, 1 The Phantom Knights of Breaksword, 1 Downward Magician, 1 Divine Arsenal Zeus Sky Thunder, 1 Link Spider, 1 Salmon Great Almirage, 1 Cherubini Ebon Angel of the Burning Abyss, 1 IP Masquerena, 1 Artifact Dogda, 1 Predaplant Vert Anaconda, 1 Nightmare Unicorn, 1 Phantom Knights of Rusty Bardish, 1 Boral Sword Dragon, and then finally Access Code Talker. Alright, so now that we have talked about the build itself here a little bit, let's now go ahead and jump straight into some gameplay, where the first game I'll show you will be just an example of the first couple of games I'll show you will be how to do this basic combo line, and then we'll see a bit more extended gameplay. So let's just get straight into it. So for this first game, we're playing against a virtual world if I remember right. So for this first game, I wanted to show you again just this base combo line of getting out DPE plus Scythe plus the Wandering Gryphon Rider. And I just kind of wanted to show it off in a way where I don't know how standard this combo line is. I feel like it is. I did a little bit of research and I watched a little bit of gameplay, but I did also kind of freeform this a little bit. If there are other and more efficient ways to make this combo, do let me know in the comments, or other things you can add on top of it, because I'm quite eager to get to just to expand kind of my horizons a bit. I'll show you what I've been doing thus far. So I see we opened Silent Boots plus Foolish Burial here, so I know I can Foolish for the Cloak for the Torn Scale, and then again, if we have Torn Scale plus Silent Boots, I know we can full combo. So as long as the opponent doesn't have an Ash, this should be a full combo here. We'll lead by activating the Foolish. Fortunately, the opponent doesn't Ash it. Or the Ancient Cloak that I'm then going to activate here. The Ancient Cloak is actually quite essential to the combo, not actually for even just the search effect, but also for the effect to boost attack and defense. That might not seem relevant, but we'll show you how it is in a little bit here. So I'm going to normal summon the Torn Scales, and this is actually a very, very important thing if you're doing this combo line here. If you normal summon Torn Scales, do not activate Torn Scales effect after normal summoning it. We will use Torn Scales effect, but it's going to be later in the turn. If we use Torn Scales while it's on the field after being normal summoned, then we're not going to get to activate Rite of Aramesir later. You might remember if you watched my Adventure Engine video, I said, oh, you can only use the effect of special summon monsters this turn. How big of a restriction is that? Well, of course, my first adventure deck I end up playing, it actually ends up being fairly relevant, as I misplayed a couple of times using the Torn Scales effect after normal summoning it and then couldn't do my full combo. So, do not use Torn Scales effect here. Instead, we're just going to special the boots and then link them right away into Cherubini. And like I mentioned in the actual deck profile itself, this is how we're going to get the adventure line worked into the combo. So I'm going to activate the Cherubini effect in order to send Water Enchantress as a cost. Then we'll banish Water Enchantress to add the Rite of Aramesir, which again, we can activate because we did not use Torn Scales effect after we normal summoned it. So I'm going to get the Fateful Adventure here. Now, you might be wondering why I didn't activate Fateful Adventure to get the Wandering Gryphon Rider just yet. The reason is because I don't want to discard any of the cards in my hand right now. I want to keep the Celestial because I'm going to make DPE here in a little bit, and I like having the options of Maxx and Droplet as potential disruption against my opponents. So that said, there is still a way I can add the Gryphon Rider without having to give any of these cards up, and we're going to do that in a little bit here. So rather than activate Fateful Adventure now, I'm going to actually use my Silent Boots effect and banish it from the graveyard. And I specifically want to add Phantom Knight's Wing. Now I'll get to special summon my Torn Scale, because Torn Scale's effect allows it to special summon from the graveyard whenever a Phantom Knight is banished from the graveyard. Now that Torn Scale, oh sorry, we'll get into that in a moment. Because we normal or special summoned a monster while Fateful Adventure was on the board, now we get to search for Dracoback the Rideable Dragon. Now, when you go to get this card from your deck, it's going to ask you, equip now, yes or no. You definitely want to hit no, because you need this card to get added to your hand. If you hit yes, it'll go straight onto the field and equip to the adventure token. But this is actually the card that we're going to discard in order to add the Wandering Gryphon Rider, because when Dracoback is sent to the graveyard for any reason, it can equip onto an adventure token. So it's basically kind of getting a free discard for the adventure effect to add the Gryphon Rider. So like I mentioned, we're now going to activate the effect, adding the Wandering Gryphon Rider, discarding the Dracoback, and then Dracoback will equip automatically onto the adventure token. Now we can special the Wandering Gryphon Rider and we have our omni-negate. Now, there is an important distinction here. If you do it this way, you are going to be susceptible to Nibiru, because with this method, Torn Scale ends up being summon number 5, if I recall correctly. Let me just count real quick. Like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yep, I just want to make sure I had that right. So if you do it this way, you are susceptible to Nibiru at this point. Specifically, if you do have another card that's going to discard, like if you open a Fogblade, you really should just activate Fateful Adventure's effect first, and then you can send the Fogblade and then special the Wandering Gryphon Rider. Though if you do that, you want to make sure it's only if you open Fogblade or Wings. Otherwise, it might be difficult to continue your combo later, just depending on your hand. But if you do get the Gryphon Rider out before the Torn Scale, then the Gryphon Rider is summon number 5. And then even if your opponent has a Nibiru, you can just negate it. So do be mindful of that with the combo. In any case, let's move on with the combo. Now that we've specialed Torn Scales and we have the Phantom Knight's Wing in our hand, now we can activate Torn Scales effect. I'm going to use the effect to discard the Wing and send Ragged Gloves. I'll then use Wing's effect to get back the Ragged Gloves that I just sent. I'm just trying to get 2 level 3 monsters on the board to overlay here into Levier the Sea Dragon, because again, we need our Ancient Cloak for the combo. That effect to add attack and defense is going to be essential, so I'm going to use Levier to bring it back right away. And now we're going to see why that effect is essential as we link Levier and Shroomy into Artifact Dagda. Artifact Dagda is how we're going to set up the Artifact Scythe and ultimately lock our opponent out of the extra deck, right? So in order to use Artifact Dagda's effect, we have to activate the effect of a card that's already on the field. Now, in certain setups, you can just get the Dagda out and then use Fateful Adventure's effect, and that's how you can meet that requirement. But in this case, we wanted the negate out before we went into the Dagda. That's where the Ancient Cloak comes in. Ancient Cloak can target any dark monster on the field, even itself. So what we're going to do here is we're going to use Ancient Cloak's effect to give itself attack points. And because we activated a card effect on the field, now we can use Dagda's effect to set the Scythe directly from our deck. Now, you may be able to see where we're going to go from here, right? Now we can just send the Ancient Cloak and the Dagda in order to make Predaplant Vert Anaconda, and now we have the DPE. So now you see how, again, with Torn Scales plus Silent Boots, not even just opening them, but just access to them, we're able to go into a full DPE plus Scythe plus Wandering Gryphon Rider omni-negate setup, and we even have a Maxx and a Droplet on top of it. So that is going to be how we set this up here. As you can see, I kind of pulled the trigger on my opponent's draw phase and activated it right away. Was actually maybe a minor misplay here, because Dracoback the Rideable Dragon ends up being a really good card to use with DPE because of the effect we already mentioned. If I had popped DPE, or not DPE, if I had popped Dracoback the Rideable Dragon plus the Scythe, then I could have just re-equipped the Dracoback and kept my Vert Anaconda. There is an argument to make. There's actually multiple different ways you could trigger the Scythe, and there's kind of arguments to each, right? I think generally it's probably a little bit better to trigger the Scythe during the draw phase, mainly because of Kaijus. Kaijus are also going to be a lot more common in this format, I think, moving forward. Maybe not a lot more common, but I think a decent bit more common, as they end up being a decent out to Wandering Gryphon Rider as well. But if our opponent Kaijus are DPE, then we're not going to be able to pop the Scythe, and that's going to be a really big problem for us, because then we only have the one omni-negate to protect us, and this combo really does rely on that extra deck lock in order to really secure the board. Because without it, it kind of is just DPE plus one negate, which is still really good, but There's certainly plenty of decks, especially now that other decks are, well, now that Adventure is out, and of course we and other decks are playing Adventure, it can be a little bit easier for them to play through that omni-negate. Now, like I said, I chose to pop the Vert Anaconda here. You could also, I remember I was going to say, make an argument for waiting until your opponent has Disruption and then popping your opponent's first thing they try to go off with and then the Scythe. Wait till they commit. You could definitely do that, but again, I'm just a little bit weary of getting Kaiju'd, so that's why I choose to do it during the draw phase. So here the opponent just, they play their first Virtual Gate, and then immediately realize, oh, I can't summon from the extra deck, and then they just concede. So on top of that, we do also have the omni-negate. I wonder if they wanted me to negate the Virtual World Gate with the Wandering Gryphon Rider, and maybe that's why they tried to do that, and maybe, I don't know, provoke it, but ultimately it didn't end up mattering. So that is like one of the basic combos of the deck where, again, we're just going straight for a DPE plus Scythe plus Wandering Gryphon Rider. Now, if you open the Torn Scale and don't have to Foolish and banish the Ancient Cloak, there's a slightly different way that you can go about doing it, and I'll show you that slight variation of the line in this game that we're going to go into right now. Okay, so this game will demonstrate, again, a slight variation of the line where we're actually going to bring Ancient Cloak back from the graveyard as opposed to banish with Leviair. So this is the way to do it without Leviair, and, you know, it's going to be more or mostly the same that we did before, so this is also going to be good, just reiteration to get the combo line down. So here we see we opened Silo Boots, and then we also opened a reinforcement of the army, right? So I know right away I can go into my combo here. So we're going to lead with reinforcement of the army, like I mentioned. I'm just going to straight up add the Torn Scale. And now we can normal summon Torn Scale and Specialist Silent Boots. Again, we're going to link right away. We're not going to use the effect of the Torn Scale that after normal summoning it. It's very tempting to, and occasionally even after knowing this, I'll still do it in misplay. But again, just really want to keep that in mind because we want to be activating Rite of Aramesir a little bit later in the turn. So again, we'll link them into Cherubni and then go straight into Water Enchantress. I say a little bit later in the turn. It's actually pretty much the next thing we're going to do here is activate Rite of Aramesir. After adding it to hand, we'll go ahead and slap it down here, get our token, and play the Fateful Adventure. Once again, I'm going to use the Silent Boots to add the wings first before adding the Fateful Adventure. But here, though, that was definitely greedy of me, as I did open the Fog Blade. Like, this is what I was talking about earlier. Here, I really should have just activated Adventure, add the Gryphon Rider, send the Fog Blade, and special the Gryphon Rider. That would have played around Nibiru, which fortunately my opponent did not have here, but it would have been very easy for me to get punished in that regard. It was definitely, like I said, just greed. Like, I wanted the extra monster effect negate, and I didn't value the threat of Nibiru appropriately in this moment. But in any case, we're lucky enough that our opponent didn't have it anyway. So now we can add the Dracoback since we summoned a monster, and now we can add the Gryphon Rider, discarding the Dracoback in order to complete the search, or complete the effect there. Equipping it right away because it got sent to the graveyard. Especially the Gryphon Rider, we'll now use the Torn Scale to send that wing and send the Ancient Cloak straight up. And now you're seeing how we can kind of skirt around needing to use Leviair, right? We can just use Torn Scale and, like I said, just straight up send the wing to set up the Ancient Cloak right away, and then we'll just link away the Cherubni and the Torn Scale into Artifact Dagda here. Now, I'm trying to think. Let's see. I'm just trying to figure out, and I was trying to figure this out in the games too. Because I think if you go into Rusty Bardish, right, you could set up a Shade Brigandine. I'm actually only just now realizing this, but I think I could actually go into Rusty Bardish here on top of everything else, right? Rusty Bardish, send Ragged Gloves, set Brigandine. Then you would have the Ancient Cloak plus the Bardish. You flip the Brigandine, you have that as a material, you send that for Link Spider. Oh, and then you just go into Dagda, but then you don't have an onboard effect to activate. So you would need another summon. So yeah, I don't know. I think there are some scenarios where you can go for the Bardish. Well, I know there are some scenarios where you can go for the Bardish as well, but just trying to figure out if this was one of them. I'm not sure that it was. I think if I'd played a little bit differently, it might have been. Oh, and then our opponent concedes early, but from there... From there, the combo line is the same, right? Well, we've already got the Scythe set up, and then we just send these away for the Vert, and then set up the DPE. We remember the rest from there. So, yeah, if I'm able to make the Bardish there, do let me know in the comments. I'm going to actually be relying on you guys in the comments quite a bit moving forward, because I'm quickly finding, as I'm trying to play like literally 7 new decks and learn 7 new decks at the same time, I'm like kind of becoming a jack of all trades, master of none. So I'm just showing off the lines that I've been using. If you have more optimized versions, do share them in the comments, and I'll be sure to call attention to those, as well as I like to get that good information out there, not only for myself, but for all of you as well. So now that we've seen some basic combo lines, let's get into some more like actual kind of back and forth games here. Let's go and do the next game. All right, so this game here is going to be against a Red Eyes deck. Felt a little bit bad, kind of like I was bullying this opponent, but I mean, it kind of just is the nature of playing competitive decks, I suppose. My opponent has the Stratos hero, which, oh man, this really makes me want to play heroes. This plus the new board, I'm not going to lie, I really, really want to play heroes, so. But, God, I could go on and on about that. But this video is about Adventure Phantom Knights, which, during the end phase, I actually special my Wandering Gryphon Rider here. This is a quick effect. So even to summon it, it's a quick effect. So you can do that during your opponent's turn. And because my opponent set 2 back row and a monster, I thought maybe it was just a bad opening hand, but maybe they are just a more back row or like disruption / floodgate focused deck. So why not get the Gryphon Rider out during their end phase before they have a chance to activate their back row, just to have something on board, right? So I decided to just do that there. Looking at the rest of my hand here, it's a little bit interesting having the Rhoda, although we did get a really good top deck of the Water Enchantress, especially given that I've already got the Gryphon Rider on board. I can just use the Enchantress to go straight into the Rite of Aramesir. My opponent's got a Maxx, so ultimately I am going to be a bit limited in that regard, although no, I'm not going to be limited. That's right. If I recall correctly, this is a game where I decided to just kind of go for it anyways. I've been trying to do a little bit more with Maxx, especially going second, right? If we can go for game, there's kind of no reason not to. And I do decide to ultimately try to go for game here. At least, if not game, just at least a little bit more of a setup than just the token plus Wanderer Gryphon Rider. I'm going to send the Brigandine in order to get the Link Spider here. That way I have 2 effect monsters, and that way I can go for the Vert Anaconda for the DPE. It does give my opponent maybe a few more draws than I should have allotted them, but especially considering I'm not going to actually have 8,000 damage on board. I got really close. I got to 7,000, and again, if you have suggestions, like this game in particular, I did want to show off because I was like, could I have OTK'd this turn? I feel like there was a chance, but I really did think about it for quite some time, and 7,000 was the closest I could come up with getting. Oh yeah, and here I ultimately decided to blow up one of the pack rows, and then that's when I see the Red Eyes Fang with Chain, and I'm like, oh, I didn't know this was, you know, if I had known it was a Red Eyes deck, maybe I would have gone, well, no, I wouldn't have gone easier. Let's be real. They are going to make the Relinquish Shanima, which does pose a threat to my DPE here. I'm just going to use the Imperm, because I want to save my DPE for potential disruption later. Same with the Wandering Gryphon Rider. I mean, I say that Anima poses a potential threat, but yeah, how many ways do we have to stop it, really? So Red Eyes Insight, I was a little tempted to negate in case I got Red Eyes Fusion, but then I realized, oh wait, they summoned Relinquish Anima, they can't go for Red Eyes Fusion. This Destiny Fusion, or this Fusion Destiny rather, I will negate with the Wandering Gryphon Rider though, because I don't need to be dealing with a DPE. If my opponent's got a relatively dead hand even after a Maxx, then I'm definitely okay with that. I'm going to use DPE during the end phase to pop one of the back rows they set. Again, Dracoback just making a really good card in general to send with the DPE here. I do like my opponent's Royal Finish Anima, by the way. It does look very nice. Alright, so here we'll bring back the DPE. Definitely get it out of the way of Anima. Torrential I'm going to let resolve here. I'm totally fine with that. I just use DPE's effect, or rather not DPE, Celestial's effect, in order to draw into some action here. And sure enough, we top deck a Rite of Aramesir. I'll summon the token. I am under Maxx again, but I'll still just go in and get the Wandering Gryphon Rider, because I figure if my opponent's playing Torrential it's not very much, it's very much not out of the realm of possibility for them to have like one of the Mirror Force variants or something. Now, oh no, hang on, dang it, I wanted to do that in time. Or wait, I can still see the log here. This was actually really funny and really smart of my opponent to do here. Right before I attacked, or rather as I was attacking for a game, they flipped up this Return of the Red Eyes, and I actually stopped and read this, because I was like, oh wait, they flipped a trap, do I just negate this with Wandering Gryphon Rider? But I was like, no, let me read it first. And if you read it, it summons monsters back from the graveyard, right? But only if they control a Red Eyes monster, or if this card is destroyed by an opponent's card effect and sent to the graveyard. Now, had I just blind negated this with the Wandering Gryphon Rider, this effect would have triggered and they would have summoned something and I would have been able to attack for games. So, that is why it is always important to read the card. I feel like a lot of people, myself even in enough alternate timelines, would have blind negated and just end up not winning this turn, or maybe even losing later as a result, because you know, my board isn't like particularly great right now, especially if I put back the Wandering Gryphon Rider and they get back a Red Eyes monster, and also given they had other back row and cards in hand. So, but thankfully, with the power of literacy, we are able to secure the game here. So, all right, let's go ahead and jump into, I've got one more game to show off here. All right, so this game was against 60 card IDS, and this was a very interesting game. This is another one where well, I mean, every game I show off on the channel, right, I'm always looking for insight from everyone here. But this was a game in particular where I feel like I had potential to play a bit better. And if that's the case, I would definitely like to, and I'm going to try to be watching for that as I watch this replay as well. If that's the case, I would definitely love to hear from you in the comments. Yeah, we're definitely going to imperm this Alistair. They don't have the Invocation, but they do have the El Shaddai fusion, so I guess, you know, something they always have it. I guess they always have something, but no, they're just gonna go straight for a Windy here, and they even get to send a Windy from their hand to the graveyard. So that is one of the better Shaddais to send, as it will let them set another Shaddai directly from the deck. They get a Beast here, so they'll throw down a Face Down as well, and then pass back to us. Look at my hand here. I opened with Torn Scale plus Silent Boots. However, given that they have Wind It Out, I can only do one special summon. So I at least opened the Fusion Destiny. I figure if I'm only going to get one summon, that one summon should probably just be DPE. Now, opponent activates the Schism here, and I decide to respond with DPE. That is going to prevent me from getting rid of the window right now this turn, like I can't battle over it. And yeah, they're going to be able to add the Schism back later, but I didn't want them to disrupt and like get like the, what is it, the water one, I think? The one that negates cards or just any kind of disruption. So obviously if I let the Schism resolve, that would have meant a fusion summon not just now but later as well. So that's ultimately why I decided to DPE and pop in response. Alright, now we get to do draw and standby, bring back the good old DPE here. And they get to flip up their Beast and start cycling through their deck now a little bit. Yeah, just because of the window here, I wasn't really able to do too much with the, even though we opened the Torn Scale and Silent Boots. Like, they're sitting here, not taunting me, but just like, oh, like, it's right there, the combo's right there. But then they go for a second window using Super Poly on top of the first one, so that's definitely a noof. And then they get to send the Aerial to banish all of our Destiny Hero stuff, so no extra draws, even if we do manage to send all this stuff. Things are looking relatively bleak here, but I figure if I top deck Forbidden Droplet, I can actually get some action going here. I don't top deck Droplet, but I do top deck Rite of Aramesir. Who's going to respond with a Maxx? That's actually totally fine. I would definitely rather they just get this out of the way now, as opposed to when I actually try to make plays later in the game, so in any case, yeah, I'll get the Fateful Adventure, add the Gryphon Rider, and then send the Dracoback. And not that I can summon the Gryphon Rider, but it's a free add, so I figure why not. And then I can use the Dracoback to get rid of one of these windows to bounce it without bringing something back. So I do get to answer at least one window here. I'll summon the Gryphon Rider during my opponent's turn, because I'll get one special summon during my opponent's turn. And then the Fateful Adventure actually gets to protect the token because it's equipped. So things are looking up for me here. Now, at this point, my opponent activates the Invocation. I decide to Gryphon Rider. This is one of the first instances where I'm like, should I have tried to negate this? Should I have just let them do this? I figure in any case, they're probably going to get the... Oh, no. This was actually just a straight up misplay because they had the magical meltdown. That's right. No, so this was actually... This one I did recognize very shortly after it happened. So I did recognize this one. Yeah, I activated the Gryphon Rider here. But I definitely shouldn't have. Because, I don't know, for some reason in my brain, magical meltdown, I thought prevented you from responding to fusion summons or effects that fusion summon, but it just prevents them from being negated. So you can still respond to them, but they just won't be negated if you respond with a negate. So yeah, losing out on my token and Gryphon Rider for kind of no reason here definitely hurts. So, and they are ultimately going to end up getting access to DPE, which is going to hurt a little bit more as well. That said, I do still figure that Droplet is a potential out here, so yeah, I'm not giving up just yet, especially when I'm trying to get, games for videos. I'm like in this mode of, let's actually see what the out is. Well, especially if you're playing Droplet. This is a point I made while playing Tri-Brigades in earlier seasons, like, because I see people who are playing 3 Forbidden Droplet, but are also like conceding right away, and it's like, well, at least give yourself the chance to top the out, which we actually did here. I totally glossed over that. We actually managed to top deck the Droplet here, so what I'm going to do in order to set both my stuff up in the graveyard is I'm going to use Droplet, send the Torn Scale to negate a DPE. That way they won't be able to disrupt me with DPE at all during my turn here. Then I can normal summon the Silent Boots, send the Boots for Almirage, that way both are in graveyard. I can banish the Boots, special the Torn Scale, and then add the Wing, of course, and then use Torn Scale, send Wing, to send... Oh god, now I'm blanking on what I actually did here. Was it the Ancient Cloak? No, it was the Ragged Gloves. Oh, that's right, because then I can just use Wing and then get the gloves back. Yeah, I've already tried to do like the... I think I've actually already used both Rite of Aramesir, right? No, just the one. But in any case, I've already used the Fateful Adventure, so... rather than try to set up a combo like that here, I'm just going to overlay into the Break Sword, and then go for Downerd, and then go for Zeus. And now, even though DPE is going to come back, I've got a Zeus set up, and I can protect it from being destroyed with my Salamangreat Almirage. Furthermore, I can use Zeus in order to send DPE so it doesn't get destroyed, so it won't come back later. I felt like that was the best play I could do here. That was kind of one of the things where I wanted to get some insight, because, like, yeah, just looking at the rest of my extra deck, I don't know. I kind of tried to figure out if I could climb to access code, but I don't think I could have. I think I was a little bit short. But if there's a line that maybe I wasn't considering, again, do feel free to let me know in the comments there. But so yeah, opponent gets back DPE. They go to activate the effect. I'm going to chain with Zeus. Not only because I want to send the DPE to the graveyard, but I just want to see if my opponent is going to respond with anything. Like maybe I can bait a potential negate they might have in their hand on Zeus rather than the Almirage, which is what I really want to resolve here, so that way that can protect my Zeus. So I use Zeus's effect, they don't respond. I then use Almirage's effect, they don't respond to that either. So we're going to be able to use Almirage to protect Zeus. And well, actually the opponent didn't get the effect anyway because they don't have a card to send, so... but it's still right to activate Almirage there because obviously we would lose Almirage either way ourselves as well. So, yeah, the opponent did have the Alistair here, which I think they actually did. I'm trying to see if they added this with the Invocation last turn. I'm trying to remember if they did or not. They did, yeah. Okay, so we knew that was coming. They go for the Macabre here. And they go to activate Alistair's effect. I immediately recognize that they're going to use Alistair to buff Macabre to run it over. So before the monster is added to the hand, I'm going to go ahead and use my Zeus's effect before my opponent can use Macabre's effect to banish Zeus. And fortunately, they did not have a monster in their hand, so we actually get to resolve this. And then they add the Alistair. But then, of course, their last card is the other Invocation, so... they get to just make another Macabre anyway. Gotta love it when they have the other Invocation, which it seems like they kind of always do. But you know, c'est la vie, such is life, so it goes. They do get to battle over the Zeus before. Oh, and then they get the Celestial draws as well before passing it back to us. So Now I'm in a bit of a bind. I do have monster effects to use in the graveyard, but I'm thinking there's no way my opponent didn't draw a monster. But, you know, I'm activating my effects. They're resolving. Okay, this is looking promising so far. My opponent... See, the thing is, though, my opponent is getting prompts to respond, so I know they either have a monster and are just letting me combo out, I guess, just to see what I'll do, or they have some kind of a hand trap. But, I mean, either way, I'm still just going to play as much as my opponent's going to allow me to play here. So, oh, that's right. I'm trying to figure out here if I can go for Access Code Talker, because I'm like, if I can go for Access Code Talker, then I can just punch down my opponent's Macabre and smack him for a game in one hit. And it took me a while to figure out, but I was like, wait a second, I think I can actually do this. I can get the Levier to bring back the Ragged Gloves. Then I can use the Fogblade to get back another Phantom Knight monster. From there, I can make my Cherubini, which I actually haven't made this game yet because we were under Winda at the beginning. And I can use Cherubini to send another Water Enchantress, or a Water Enchantress, to get my other Rite of Aramesir. And then I can use that to get the token to go into the Link Spider. Excuse me, and then go into the access code. But unfortunately, our opponent was just playing with our emotions and did have the monster this whole time and just kind of allowed us to go as far as we did. So, like, I didn't really have anything else to go into. Like, yeah, there's Nightmare Unicorn, but I don't have a card to discard, so unfortunately that was not going to be an out either. And it's not going to be too hard for my opponent to be able to find lethal here. So this is actually going to end up, especially when they activate Grass, like, good lord. Yeah, this is going to end up being a loss on our part. Again, if I hadn't made the misplay of activating Gryphon Rider, even though there was no... I couldn't negate the effects. Like, I think that could have been a win right there. But I'm also... I guess the main thing I was wondering is if you guys have any insight into that last turn where I made Zeus. Because I feel like there might have been another line for me there. I just wasn't really sure what it would have been. I felt like setting up the Almirage... Well, using the drop it to negate the DPE and then setting up the Almirage was, I think, essential in order to comboing, period. And then once I had the Almirage, I figured, well, I could just go for Zeus and then protect it with the Almirage. So, if I had a different or better line, do let me know in the comments again. But, yeah, I'm going to try to set, I don't know, something up here. But, yeah, ultimately, especially with the Schism being flipped up, I'm like, okay, there's no way. I'm just going to go ahead, and I thought I surrendered at this point. Yeah, okay, I did. So, that is ultimately going to be a loss, but it was still a very close game, so I wanted to show it off here. So, let's go and take one last look at the deck for the outro. Okay, everybody, I want to thank you very much for watching the video, especially to the very end like this. That not only means a lot to me personally, but also is an excellent way to support the channel. Other ways that are great to support the channel are by commenting and subscribing. Again, comments, not only am I always looking forward to hearing from you all in regards to constructive criticism and feedback about builds and gameplay, but again, especially moving forward, playing so many new decks at the same time, I'm going to be relying on you guys a little bit more than normal to help me out there. So I very much appreciate those of you who are chiming in with suggestions there. And yeah, those who are subscribing, again, I appreciate that very much. And not only is that, again, a good way to support the channel, but we'll also let you get notified when my videos come out, which they do release every single day. You will get a new Master Duel video from me every day. And this week is going to be an especially good time because we're going to be covering a lot of new decks, a ton of different gameplay, a ton of different decks being used in gameplay, rather, as well as deck profiles and other regular stuff to the channel, like viewer specials. Thinking of making an updated staples list now that we have the adventure engine. Just talking about what cards are good as staples in this particular format. I kind of like doing those videos that way, but that's a topic for another time. For now, without further ado, this is Scythe Lock. I'm signing out. Hope you guys have a fantastic day.